May 14th, the Feast of St. Matthias, Apostle. What draws us to the Church, and what sustains us in our commitment? At one time, it might have been social pressure, loyalty to family and community, or fear of condemnation. As these external pressures weakened, many left the Church or drifted to the periphery. This shows the importance of having a personal connection. This could involve respect for the intellectual tradition and moral guidance of the Church, or being moved by the beauty of its liturgy and the majesty of its buildings. But for most, that is not enough to sustain a lifelong commitment. Ultimately, the one element that has the power to engage fully and transform people's lives is a deep personal relationship with Jesus Christ. The apostles recognized that in the first reading today. No doubt traumatized by the betrayal of Judas, they knew they needed a replacement whose devotion and witness they could count on. Their first criterion, therefore, was for someone who knew Jesus personally, not as a story, a spiritual force, or an abstract idea, but as a living, breathing human being. They needed someone who had experienced firsthand Jesus' compassionate healing and wise teaching, who had seen his courageous conviction in asserting God's sovereignty over every human power, and his devoted self-sacrifice in surrendering to cruel torture and death in obedience to the Father. That person had to have shared with them the devastating loss of their beloved teacher, followed by the overwhelming surprise and joy of seeing him not just alive, but transformed in glory, triumphant over evil and death. It was essential that their new partner would have walked with Jesus as a companion, because he would be expected not to just to talk about Jesus, but to live Jesus, trusting completely in him, so that he had the freedom to follow him at any price, as the other apostles had learned to do. Today's gospel reinforces this message. Jesus invites his disciples into the deepest intimacy, that of friendship. This is an extraordinary gift. It changes their relationship from that of subordinates, servants, to that of equals and partners in his work. Even more important, friendship requires a strong personal knowledge and commitment on both sides. Jesus pledges to share everything he has with his disciples, and that the Father will always take care of them. In return, he asks for their own devotion, not only to him, but to one another. Friendship is so precious because it establishes a level of trust not found in other relations. We trust our friends because we have come to know them, and we have established a history of shared commitment. It is always a lot easier to take risks and face life's challenges when we know our friends have our backs. As is so often true in John, Jesus' words to his disciples in today's gospel are also addressed to us. We are called to be disciples and witnesses, but also friends of the Lord. We need to take time to appreciate what a precious gift that is. To make that offer a reality, we have to get to know Jesus personally, just like Matthias did. This means Jesus needs to be more than an abstraction or an icon. We have to know him as a flesh and blood reality, which means walking with him through his earthly life, his death, and his resurrection. We do that by reading, prayer, and sharing experiences with others who are seeking to know him more intimately. This has been the passion of serious Christians throughout the ages, and there are many approaches one can take. It is the central focus of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, whose stated objective is to help us to know, love, and serve God in and through Jesus Christ. Its primary method is imaginative contemplation, while asking God and Our Lady to bring us into a more intimate relationship with Jesus. That, in turn, builds the kind of trust that allows us to surrender to God's will, as the apostles did, and face the sacrifices that are required of a true witness to the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. One example of the importance of friendship in Ignatian spirituality is the work of Reverend William Barry, S.J., who was a major figure over the last 50 years in recovering the original spirit of the spiritual exercises, updating them with the insights of modern scholarship, and promoting them through extensive writing, training, and giving the exercises to many thousands of people. Father Barry made God's call to intimate friendship a major theme in his work. In fact, one of his books on Ignatian spirituality is entitled A Friendship Like No Other. It is always a tremendous blessing to have a true friend, when that friend is Jesus himself, whose fidelity, compassion, and generosity are without limit. We are richly blessed indeed.